And would you say that's kind of what we're seeing with these pro-Trump rallies, kind of to be the against the Black Lives Matter rally, or like we saw in Kenosha recently, where the young man came out with the AR-15 and was shooting protesters? Would you say that's kind of
and one of the things I perhaps didn't make as clear in the essay as it should have is it's always important to remember that there is a distinction between Trump's electoral base, namely the people who show up to the polls to vote for him, and his mass base, which is much broader and much wider than the electoral base. And I think that's sort of where the so-called Lumpenproletariat comes into play. These are the people who show up at the rallies. These are the people who show up with the guns. These are the people who storm the Michigan and the Idaho State House and run people down with cars. And of course, unfortunately, what we also see is in those cases that the police tend to stand on the sidelines and nod their approval.
Oh, that was actually pretty disgusting when they were handing them water.
Yeah.
What do you think is helping Trump galvanize this group of people, this Lumpenproletariat, if you will?
Well, this is one of the things I emphasize in the book, which of course is much longer than the essay, is that this has been a very long process of class formation. This so-called white Lumpenproletariat has been in a process of formation, probably going back to the mid-1980s, certainly the 1980s, largely as a consequence of deindustrialization. And these are former working class people who've lost their jobs. And if you were to use the examples, it's the closed steel mills in Pennsylvania, the iron mines in Minnesota, the coal mines in West Virginia, the auto factories in Michigan. People who lost their jobs in industries, and I would argue primarily due to automation. Or in the case of coal, we just are not using it as much because all of it. But as these jobs don't come back, I would argue that on the one hand, liberal Democrats have suggested, well, you should go to college. Even recently, Joe Biden said to a bunch of coal miners, you need to learn how to code. So liberal Democrats have offered them nothing. But what Trump has offered them is two things. One, he's offered them an explanation for their situation. Blame it on the immigrants, blame it on the black people, but don't blame it on the capitalists who automated your jobs out of existence, right? Blame it on globalization. So he offers them first an explanation, and then, of course, he offers them as a nostalgic solution. We're going to go back to the good old days. I'm going to bring those jobs back. I'm going to bring those factories back. And of course, he hasn't done any of that. And even if he succeeded, it wouldn't matter because the types of jobs in those facilities are now so high tech that the people who were working there 30 years ago wouldn't be qualified for those jobs. So you create this massive kind of Lumpenproletariat of deindustrialized former workers who are justifiably very dissatisfied, very unhappy, despondent, in despair, no prospects for the future or for their children. And we're now into a situation where we are into the second or third generation of this class formation. And Trump is the only person who has offered them an explanation and offered them a solution, as false as it may be.
To hear the rest of this show and more, you can find us at This Is Revolution Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Podbean, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Also, you can find the show on the Zero Books YouTube channel. New shows premiere every Wednesday. This is Revolution.